he does work very nicely in terms of poke, but I'm just kind of looking at it. He takes ages to ramp up, like really, really a long time. And the thing is, you are going to struggle, especially in the early game in terms of push. You're going to get shoved underneath your turret. This is perfect for the composition that G2 have drafted, because right now I feel it's very difficult to take advantage of the fact that they have an Ivern. There's like 0 to no risk of any aggressive laners that Misfits could look to abuse. By going for a Kog'Maw, you set up nicely. Your sieging is a little bit better. Playing around objectives is pretty solid. Your team fighting is pretty good, depending on how good you are at the Kog'Maw. But I think that this is something that we're going to have to watch a little bit more. I feel like that the mid lane is going to be another scenario where it's very farm-centric, and I think a lot of the action is actually going to be more focused towards the bottom lane.
And when Perk said in that video that we saw earlier today that Power only had 3 champions, I don't think Kog'Maw was on that list. So we're going to have to see how well he can execute here. If you have faith in Misfits, if you think they can keep it clean and close it out with a 2-0, hashtag MSF win. If you think G2 can take this, if they can bring it back, they can bring it to a 3-game series, hashtag G2 win as we get ready to get onto the Rift.
Well, I think a lot of people were not expecting the possibility of a 3-game set between these two series. If anything, I think that when you look at the games today, I think a lot of expecting were 2-0 for H2K, 2-0 for G2. But definitely, both the Unicorns of Love and Misfits have already started off to a very surprising start, which to me is great to see. Nice to see more competition here in Europe.
Good to see more teams contesting for the top, not just the holy trinity of Splice, H2K, and G2. Although, to be fair, this was often the case in the previous season. We see so many teams start out well, not able to continue the follow-up, but so far so good. Misfits with the early invade, trying to get knowledge of where that Ivern's going to go. Which clear is he going to opt for? We've heard it from many casters and players as well. You can go for the fast level 4. You can look to invade, look to shut down the Rek'Sai early. And
I think this is a smart play from Misfits, because when you backtrack to the Ivern game that was brought out in the G2 versus Fnatic in week 1, Trick did go for that early evade against Amazing, and it really set him behind, especially on that Lee Sin. So by getting this deep vision, they can track where Trick is trying to go, what his pathing is in the early game, and they can plan around making sure that Kakao gets all of his early buffs.
Of course, still have to respect the Rek'Sai here. We'll be able to clear out reasonably quickly. May have a little bit more reliable setup for ganks, but they're going to spot him as well. See Deathfire Touch coming in. Nothing too crazy here.
For context, for those that might not know, wind speakers on Ivern, because it just adds to the value in terms of his supportive abilities.
Oh, we've seen this one before.
Yes, we have.
A big fan of harassing here.
Yep.
How far, though? Not going to take it this time around. Just running him down as they both walk their way up to top lane. I mean, maybe this is something we're going to continue to see against Rek'Sai, of course. Not a very, powerful or scary level 1.
Well, we also need to, speaking of Rek'Sai and his early potency, we did see in game 1 of this set, the first blood coming out from Kakao's gank down in the bottom lane. And in terms of where he has options to gank, top lane is a possibility, but do you really want to invest your resources into the top half of the map when the likelihood of a bot lane dive is so high? When you have the pushing power of Sven and Mithy on this Jhin and Malzahar, you have the pushing power on the Rise, enabling the roam down. But it's very risky, and I feel that Kakao really just needs to invest his early game into vision, just making sure the bottom half of the map is lit up, making sure that they can read the early setup from G2, and just preparing for the play that they made themselves in game 1.
Kakao now moving in. Trick just going to pick up each of these camps as he goes through, but Kakao will get knowledge of where his opposition is at. Now to see if Trick will make his way to the bottom lane, because Ignar and Han Sama have been controlling it thus far. Mithy and Sven sort of on the back foot here as Karma and Ashe, kind of the world's powerhouse duo of the bottom lane.
So this is what we were talking about during Champion Select, where very early on, Malzahar's push isn't the strongest, because if he does use those Voidlings, it has an incredibly long cooldown, and you can very easily abuse it. Ignar, because he was able to dodge out from the Voidlings early on, this actually enables both the Ashe and the Karma to get a good push off, but this will change over time. The question is, how much can Misfits bottom lane take advantage of this weaker early level 1 and 2, where the Malzahar and Jhin can't really push as hard?
It's going to be interesting, of course, to see as well. I like the variation coming in on the bot lane matchup here. We see longsword, 3 pots, a lot more sustain, a lot less immediate stats in a fight, but we'll get them faster towards that serrated Dirk. Mithy just being an irritating Malzahar, if we're completely honest.
Kind of what Malzahar does. Now you're starting to see that once he hits level 3, that's where the lanes start to swing a little bit more. Meanwhile, in the top lane, the riveting Poppy versus Maokai matchup, a rare one that we rarely see.
I think they good skin choices, though, because at least it's visually entertaining. You know, we got the Lollipoppy, we got the Maokai. It's cute. You know, it's a cute top lane.
I mean, speaking of cute, look at Trick. He's adorable, a giant candy man.
And now moving in, maybe looking for the invade here. Moving towards the top side.
They know he's
spotted out by the Tremor Sense. Maokai can move forward. They have to be careful. Has the level advantage, but just flashes out to safety. Doesn't want to take the risk there.
He has to. I mean, you have to respect the possibility of Alfari having the quicker route down. The knockup from Kakao makes a lot of sense from Trick. He will get the level 4. He will deny the early experience away from Kakao. And I feel like overall, Trick isn't looking to make a huge number of early ganks. If he's going to try and make it, it will be at that level 4 mark. So for the time being, it's okay. It's not the biggest loss.
At the end of the day, of course, we have to really wonder what Trick plans to do in the early game for this matchup, because it was Kakao who dominated the map last time around. This is a guy, we didn't know where to place him on the jungle tier list. It had been so long since we'd seen him outside of China. Perkz, though, potentially in trouble as Trick starts to get aggressive here.
Ghost used by Perkz, maybe getting a collapse onto Ignar.
Very aggressive, but there's a lot of members waiting in the wings. Ignar's going to lose a lot of health as Mithy makes his way to the mid lane.
So just a bit of trading back and forth. Ignar actually making a roam up from the bottom lane. But backtracking to what you were talking about, this is the impressive stat line from Kakao in his game 1. And in all honesty, I had a few more expectations from Trick, especially when you're on that Kha'Zix. I felt like that he was in a really good position to set up a lot of pressure early on in the top half of the map. He didn't really take advantage of that. They didn't play around the level 6 power spike of Shen. And that's really what enabled Kakao to have such a strong start. 93% kill participation. He really was a large facilitator, and where all of the early advantages came from Misfits in game 1.
And you see the kills plus assists at 15. He was a part of everything for so much until he got later in the game, until the team fights got messier. But all that early bottom lane action, all of the smart proactive plays with Kakao moving in, the rest of the team from Misfits there to back up as well. I wonder if we're going to see the same unity, the same consistency coming in this early game as well. Or if Misfits might, you know, struggle to find the early advantage as G2 start to adapt.
Well, so far, G2 have had a pretty good early game, but both compositions are pretty scale-heavy, especially when you look at someone like a Kog'Maw. I'm actually really interested to see like who has the strongest spike. Like in terms of team fighting, I would give the earlier spike to Ryze, but like it's because you so rarely see a Kog'Maw that it's difficult to properly assess how much damage he actually does until you go till at post game and then you realize, oh, he did 80 million damage. I see, right?
Reasonable number. Good number to pick. 80 million. Got it. Well, we'll hold you to that. Vedius. You can tweet him at VediusLol at LolVedius if it doesn't hit 8 million. But now we're going to see some aggression in the jungle. Ryze moving up with the ultimate as well. Kakao potentially in trouble. Perkz hoping to find the lockdown, but the flash is up for Kakao, and he's just going to burn it for safety in the end.
So this is the problem that you have by playing a Kog'Maw in the mid lane. You have like 0 collapse pressure. You have like 0 kill pressure early on into the game. It's Ignar.
He's locked up. Voidlings are going to town, but they're going to get cleared out.
Oh, that damage is disgusting. For those that don't know, if you do land the Q, the silence from Malzahar does refresh the actual the blueberry pie, which then just results in the Voidlings doing even more damage to you. So you really want to try and avoid the silence, and that's part of why the Jhin Malzahar combo is so devastating, because if you land the root, you just take so much damage.
Terrifying more too, as both bot lanes are approaching level 6. Now level 6 not going to matter for Ignar. The extra mantra not really going to help out too much in the end. But the ult coming in from Malzahar could be everything. As we mentioned before, there's not CC here if they ult the Ashe. If they ult the Ashe first, Karma has no way to disrupt this.
Yep. So if we are going to see a gank, it should likely be in the bottom lane. I feel like that now the level 6 marks are being hit for a lot of the teams. We may even see a rotation from the Misfits bottom lane up to the top due to this potential collapse from the side of G2. But for the time being, they're just going to play the gamble. They're just going to invest a lot of vision into the bottom lane. You can see that already in the river, Kakao has gone both the scuttle grab and invested a lot of wards. You've also got a deep control ward coming out from the side of Misfits too. So they're preparing for it. They're preparing for the possibility of this dive and this roam. But given that we have to remember Perkz did use his ultimate to set up a gank onto Kakao in his jungle, so perhaps they're still waiting for that to come off cooldown.
Taking their time. Perkz, though, clearly with the push priority in mid lane for now. Maybe more difficult as they move forward. His Power of Evil gets a few more levels under his belt and a bit more mana to continue clearing out. But Perkz already on the way down. Debating who to give the extra red buff to. Sven wants it. That makes sense.
Part of me kind of wants to give it to the Malzahar, because I feel like that would just make his laning phase far more oppressive. Gives a little bit more freedom to Sven. Instead, will be the AD carry to grab that. Another advantage of having this supportive jungler in the form of Ivern. And another reason why I think he's actually very good into champions like Rek'Sai, who typically don't get off very many early ganks, can't really exert a huge amount of enemy jungle pressure.
Trick. He doesn't want to kill that control ward. He's happy to give Misfits
I don't think
control.
he saw it, I'm not going to lie.
Well, they're now very aware that Trick is on the bottom side. Kakao now moves into the mid lane. But he's just taking the tourist route, maybe hoping to find a repeat gank there later with use of the tunnel or the farm alarm.
So this is why you start to see it become a mid lane. Early on, the Cogmore just gets kind of pushed underneath his turret, but once he gets a couple of levels underneath his ooze, that's really when he starts to get a lot of his wave clear. He also has his ultimate to add to it, so then they just go back and forth, trying to stack up that tier that both of them have picked up pretty early.
Now he's at the level 8 mark, of course it is. 4 ranks in, 195 base damage, decent scaling as well, so pretty clean way to clear out those waves.
The Void Ooze hurts, like, for a guy that just throws up on you, like, it really, like, it's a slap in the face.
Yeah, there's a lot of skills in the game where you're like, that makes sense, that should do a lot of damage. You're like, the throw up on the ground hurts a lot. I don't know why. Does a lot of damage. But now as we set our sights back on the bottom lane, we're still kind of waiting for the early proactive plays to come in for G2.
Yeah.
Really taking their time here, kind of wondering what they're waiting for. We saw similar hesitation from Vitality in some of their losses. It did not work out well for them.
I feel like a part of the reason as to why they're not going to it is because if you actually look at the health of the tier 1 turret in the bottom lane, it's still very healthy. So the bottom lane of G2 haven't really been able to exert a huge amount of damage and pressure, which means that the likelihood is, even if G2 get the dive, they can't necessarily guarantee the turret. And the main goal of the roam is you force your opponents away, and ideally you get a kill and the turret, but the main focus of the roam is to actually just walk in, force down the turret with the numbers advantage, and then walk away. And given that it actually hasn't taken that much damage, it's much harder for G2 to actually set that play up.
See Power of Evil, no hesitation to clear the waves now as Kakao moves back into the jungle. More aggressive itemization coming out from him this time around. Less of a tank focus. Tiamat coming in as well.
Yeah, I mean, last game he just rushed the Randuins, but a part of that was due to the triple, quote-unquote, AD
Dead Man's Blade. Dead Man's Blade.
Oh, yes, you're very right. The Dead Man's Blade. So he
Wants
just
to go
the early
fast.
armor. Yeah. I mean, he was stacking it with the Cloud Drakes, you know.
It's like lightning. This time around it's going to be the Ocean Drakes. Of course, more impactful the earlier you get it. Very effective in laning phase. Not so effective as you move forward, but a poke comp would be very happy to have it, keeping Kog'Maw's mana pool up and alive as they start to siege.
Interesting that G2 are actually investing a lot of their vision into the top side, potentially setting up a dive, but this is actually just enabling Misfits to just rotate around because they know now that he has been spotted out. Will result in Misfits picking up the first dragon of the game, and sure, I mean, Kakao will lose his red buff, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that's a bad trade.
No. Of course, red buff will be donated over to Expect as well, so maybe that can give them a bit more of a laning advantage. We'll have to see how much of an effect the bonus regeneration of the Ocean Drake has. Still stuck in this laning phase, still extending, still moving forward. Kog'Maw continues to stack the tier, Rise in a similar position. Jhin on one item is Expect. Much more comfortable to get aggressive with the red buff backing him up. And at the end of the day, not a whole lot happening. Both teams playing chess here, looking for an opening.
But this is still interesting in its own right, because what we have to remember is that Misfits, in every single one of their games, have gotten themselves an early game lead. Even against G2 in game 1, they got that fantastic gank in the bottom lane, but now they're even, they're dead even. And nothing has really happened. They're playing this scaling composition, and this is another big question mark for them, because how do they play against one of the top teams in Europe when they haven't managed to get that early advantage, when they don't have control of the map, when the vision is literally even.
When you enter the team fights on an even level, when it comes down to outplaying your opponents mechanically, setting up better in terms of positioning, remains a big question here. Mythic waiting around the corner. He's gonna have that Void Shift procced, actually all too important if Hans Sama wants to disrupt any engages. Cacao takes the Scryer's Bloom. The single blue buff left up for anyone who wants to take it, unfortunately, does not work for Cacao. But Mithy, Sven, and Trick are moving forward, advancing into the bottom side, laying down the vision. Misfits a little bit slow on the response here.
Trick doing a great job of just controlling the neutral objectives from Cacao. And I feel that right now, there's the only objectives that they can really look to control. But notice how hesitant the bottom lane of Misfits are playing right now. They realize that they've lost a lot of control. Ryze is pushing in the mid lane. He has his ultimate available, almost level 11, so he has the additional range. And they're aware that Trick is playing in the bottom half of the map. So very smart response from the side of Misfits.
And G2 slowly but surely starting to build out a bit of a lead here, mostly coming from the mid lane farm differential there. So they continue to trade on the top side of the map. Interesting to see what they can gain with this. Nothing too major quite yet, but if it continues to grow steadily, could be something for G2 to play around.
Intense action in the top lane. Are you mesmerized by it?
I'm mesmerized. I was just waiting. I was like, we're gonna keep watching this. All right, it's cool. It's cool.
I just realized like G2 have built themselves a pretty good candy team. Now we just need like a candy Malzahar. That'd be great. Like where he spawns like little voidlings of candy. Oh, look at me, I'm candy.
I want to remind everyone that this man is employed by Riot Games. These are the ideas he comes up with.
I am just a bundle of innovation. Dude, you haven't even heard about my disco set skins. Like Victor, where he presses the W,
I think disco might not be the best term to use on EU West for a set of skins.
I think it would be so good though. Like, think of how good a disco cannon would be.
Now they're using Daisy to siege up. No disco cannon this time around. Just Candy Ivern.
Parties in the bottom lane. Woo. Anyway, the bottom lane of Misfits have actually backed away. So this is going to result in quite a lot of damage going down onto this tier 1. Now would be a good opportunity for G2 to look for that roam. Again, Malzahar has his ultimate. He has now got a second rank in it, the max rank in it, being level 11. But again, I'm just watching the pathing of Trick, and like the times where he goes around to the bot, what aren't ideal, they're not really optimal, and it's just allowing Cacao to get this vision down, which makes it so much harder for G2 to actually set up this dive. But now they're moving as a unit. This could be an opportunity.
Now we have to remember this is a limited window where G2 are going to be able to continuously get pressure. The Kog'Maw will come online eventually. Has the Archangel staff working towards the Seraph's Embrace. May just build a little bit more damage here, a bit more mana to keep the poke going. They have pressure for now, but for how much longer?
So if you weren't entirely positive that this was a slow game, the only champions to deal more than 1,000 damage so far in this game are in the top lane. So little to no trading has been coming out. But have a look at Ryze. He is moving towards the bottom.
Waiting, maybe looking for the setup. Perk's on the way in, but TP coming in from Alphari. Are they going to take it? No, just backing off, just wanting to burn the cooldown. TP advantage for G2, actually very smart play. And it gotta feel bad to be Alphari. If you don't pull the trigger there, maybe G2 commit, maybe G2 go in.
Honestly though, but it was a good play from both sides, because not only do G2 force the teleport out from Alphari, but they also read the play very well. Misfits, read the play very well, because notice that Cacao was already in the bottom side of the map. Alphari had moved to a position where he could TP and provide that support.
Oh no. Alphari may have bit off more than he can chew, though. He does have the flash available. Perk's dealing a decent amount of damage. Candy King is on the way in, and Alphari now set to fall. Not even going to burn the flash. Accepts his fate. His first blood drops for G2.
Really good collapse coming out from G2. This is the early game that we wanted to see. Decided not to make the map movement down to the bottom lane, instead using the Ghost to get the collapse up top. And Perks nets himself first blood.
It's the early game we wanted to see, but it is 17 minutes into the game.
That's fair. That's fair.
A little bit coming online here in the mid lane, but in the end, still falling in favor of G2. As they approach about a 2K gold lead for themselves. And honestly, Trick continues to just rain hell on this jungle, but if he may be in trouble, Mithy going to have to back out. Trick is in trouble. Daisy going in. Redemption not going to proc soon enough. Misfits responding with a pick of their own.
So, G2 getting a little bit too big for their britches there is now Perks. He does have his flash, but taking a lot of harass in the mid.
Sven getting bottom lane tower in the meantime, though. Misfits making small trades while G2 start to take large advantages. Definitely not where they wanted to be. First tower gold dropping as the solo clear comes out for Sven.
But I just want to backtrack to that kill right there, because honestly, that was greedy from Trick. He did have his flash, and yes, Alphari was dead, but he should have seen by now that the bottom lane of Misfits had rotated to the top side. And I just feel like that it was just a bit of a mistake. Now, The play here, I think, was just Alfari making a misplay. He doesn't realize that the people are missing on the map. This should have been red. He has no vision control.
Oh, it doesn't matter, though, because Zama's going off. He's trying to get another kill. Perks is slowed, but it's not going to matter in the end. G2 set to take the advantage. Ignar running. Expect. Doing poppy things, but not enough poppy things to take Ignar in the end.
1-for-1 overall up in the top lane. We'll have to backtrack and see how that play actually happened, but Misfits should be able to respond with a dragon. But this is overall better for G2 because not only did they get the tier 1 in the bottom, they're able to set themselves up for the tier 1 in the top, and now they've opened up the map so much more. This enables G2 to move into the enemy jungle and gain so much more solid control in terms of plays that they want to make around the map.
It's just, you can see this is going to be a bigger boon for G2, because the thing about dragons, you're going to get some small buffs here. We'll hold that thought.
Oh, okay, so it was the roam from Perks. Like, this is actually a really good collapse from the side of G2. Punishing the fact that Misfits had tried to prioritize getting that tier 1 in the top. Didn't read it quite well. Even with all the vision, they just couldn't disengage fast enough because of the ultimate from Ryze, and this is the level 11 advantage that he does have. But honestly, props to Hans as well to be able to get a kill back in return.
Yeah, smart play, knowing his own limits, knowing his damage output as well. But looking back on the Dragons, you got a 2K gold lead for G2, and that's pretty big. That 2K gold spread across the team, albeit makes it so that anyone and everyone can buy exactly what they need. Whereas the Mountain Drake, the Ocean Drake, not everyone's going to need the mana regen. You're not going to need, you know, the extra damage to towers most of the time, but gold can be whatever you want it to be.
Yes, and it's also about control. They don't actually net themselves that tier 1 at the top. Misfits yet to actually claim their first tower of the game. And now I feel like if you're Misfits, you're in a bit of a sticky situation because you want to try and open up the map for yourself a little bit more, but Ryze is very strong. He can actually go off into a side lane, and against an Ashe Karma, the all-in threat isn't actually that dangerous, especially if you don't have full control of a topside river. So what you can do if you're G2 is you move Sven and Malzahar into the mid lane. You can send Poppy down bot as we see Arrow.
You can just catch Mithy instead. Power of Evil. Doesn't really hesitate to throw down that ultimate there, just to poke him out, just to close out that kill.
Don't know what Mithy was doing, in all honesty. Definitely not what we expect from the season support. Trying to contest vision when his Ryze is being pushed underneath the turret and Sven is in his own half of the jungle. Mithy just honestly didn't have the appropriate support there. And he ends up getting punished for it. So, especially with no flash. Remember that he did burn it earlier on in the top lane.
What is this pick going to amount to, though? Right now, it's Misfits vision. Maybe Perks soon enough.
What I'm scared about for Misfits is the fact that Perks has gotten himself both the Roa and a fully stacked Archangel staff. And in 1 versus 2, you can see how strong he is.
Oh no, this could be disastrous. The exhaust is there. Perks getting summoners coming in from Ignar to make sure, but it's just one summoner traded for one in the end, and Perks continues to apply pressure on the top side.
So this backtracks to what we were talking about before Mithy got caught out of position, as Perks using his ultimate to... I missed the ward! Feels bad, man. That was unlucky.
I love the frustration cue. He just wants you, audience, to know that he's aware and that he did see that and it was a mistake. So, as we were talking about, so Perks, he can easily go off into the side lane. You can send Poppy to the bottom. And with the Malzahar and Jhin in the mid lane, it's actually very difficult for Power of Evil to even slightly overextend because of the all-in potential. He doesn't have the cleanse. He is pretty squishy. And so G2 just have so much pressure across the map, and you can see as well, good vision being set up in the top side of Misfits jungle from Trick to enable Perks to just continue pushing, and he's actually getting a lot of damage down onto this tier 1 turret in the top. Grinding down the advantage for themselves in the end. Not quite a 3K gold lead, but G2 happy to be in this position overall. The one boon for Misfits is that Power of Evil does continue to scale, and as vulnerable as he is to an aggressive dive, has mostly safe wave clear, can sit back, can just look to play as far back as possible. And really, G2 not trying to push anything else. Happy to just keep taking these small advantages.
So now that we're approaching the... Alright, we're at the 23-minute mark. Baron has to be a card on the table. G2 gonna look to do exactly what Misfits did earlier on in game 1, where you basically set up vision control, you deny the vision from the enemy team, and you force them into a position that becomes very difficult to contest, so you can get yourself a pick. When you have a Malzahar, you have the Ivern, you have the Ryze damage to add to that, it becomes very scary, and this Baron taking team is much more potent than that of Misfits. Or at least Misfits was in game 1.
Now, definitely easier for them to do it too when the arrow is Cool.
Sorry, I laughed at the damage dealt this game.
Guys, I want you to screen clip this and post it on Twitter without context and complain about how much damage Poppy does.
Oh, man.
You'll make, I think, the Rito design team very sad. Obviously, Poppy damage has been pretty heavily nerfed with the changes to the ultimate, but
it's also just because
they're the only people hitting each other, the number does tend to go up.
This is why it gets so skewed. But speaking of damage, the person that we need to look at for Misfits is Paravival. Game 1, he had a very impressive performance. He got a fantastic start on the LeBlanc early on, but now he's transitioned from early to mid-game assassin into this late scaling mage. Now, this was typically what he was known for in the past, and so far he's done reasonably well. Yes, he's a bit behind in farm, and in terms of items, he's ever so slightly behind.
Well, and
but he's still in a great position.
The Kog'Maw was the power of evil special.
It was. And well, Froggen brought it out first, technically.
I'm not going to argue about who played it first.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm just saying, Power of Evil enjoyed the pick. Sometimes questionable when you bring it out, but it's looking effective here so far. You know, really just fulfilling its role as something to clear waves. You have to see how much of an impact it has in the later game team fights. Of course, Ocean Drake 23 seconds away as G2 moved their control into this area.
Oh, who got it? Oh, Power of Evil did. Good job. I thought Perks actually stole that away with the Q. Thought, like, oh, cheeky. But no, he didn't. Feels bad. Anyway, fully stacked Rod of Ages. Locket as well as Redemption on top of Trick. And this is actually really where the iPhone starts to turn on because he's got a lot of points in all of his abilities. He's got 2 completed support items. It's going to be really difficult for Misfits to win these team fights, I feel, at this point in the game.
Yeah, rank 2 of Daisy, max rank of Trigger Seed. Make it pretty easy to slow down and catch out any of the more vulnerable members. Trick. He's looking to start a party here. Has he bit off more than he can chew? The teams are starting to move forward. Snare goes in. Mithy first up to go to the back line. Mithy goes down, but Cacao is being chased. Tunnel over the wall. Pops up just to make sure Daisy can't get anything else. Flash over from Perks. Curtain call, and it's going to be curtains for Misfits. Hansama, one shot hit, and they dodge it. Goes wide. Nice sidestep. No one going down from Misfits quite yet outside of the initial pick from Cacao. Oh, snared up. Power of Evil is going to be able to walk away from this one in the end. G2, nice catch in the end.
Neither tank joined the fray. 1-for-1 overall, but G2 will get themselves that tier 1 turret in the mid lane, and they're looking to get a little bit more. Alfari, I feel he can't really go for anything too aggressive right now, but this is also the risk of Misfits compositions. Only 2 major damage dealers. And if one of them ends up getting locked up, things become so difficult. You can see we have the picture on picture on picture on picture on picture, just to emphasize how great
every angle possible, every face in the game possible. We want to show it to you all at the same time. But of course, Ocean Drake going to drop for G2. 1 Drake to match out. No longer does Misfits have complete control over the objective, and no longer are they taking it for free, more importantly. G2 building themselves a lead, fighting back here in game 2, and Misfits looking a little bit lost without that early lead.
Well, I feel like that they're struggling simply because of how much their comp relies on scaling. You really need like 3 items.
Wood shift.
Yep. It's just going to be like, nah, mate. Nah. I'm good. I'm Gucci. But yeah, you're really starting to see how G2, they do struggle, sorry, not G2, Misfits are struggling to try and force any advantages when they have such a scaling composition. Around the 30-minute mark, once 3 items are finished for Power of Evil and Hans, is really where they can turn on a little bit more. But I feel like that with the disadvantage that they put themselves in already, it could very well be difficult. I'm looking at Perks, 3-0-0, 3 completed items, and he is so dangerous. But now we finally have the replay. The flank coming in from Cacao looked promising. Mithy gets popped out of the fight, but Cacao gets brought so low that he has to do the same. And really, this is the point where you're seeing that it's so difficult for Misfits to actually turn it around because they don't have their front line. The supportive Trick is enabling Perks to just run at the side of Misfits full steam ahead without having to worry about anything because of how much utility the Trick brings to the party.
And look at the Perks damage coming in that last fight, 3.5k. Power not able to match that whatsoever. Just forced out of the fight so early, not free to dish out as much poke as he'd like. Alfari did a lot of damage, but also wasn't in that team fight. So I think we're going to assume that that happened on the top side.
I feel like that Alfari it was made difficult for him to really join the fray because of Expect, and G2 knew that as long as Maokai doesn't come in, then they should be fine. So honestly, good job from Expect to keep him busy, and one of the matches that we wanted to talk about a little bit more was, could Alfari be able to swing this top lane? But when he's constantly being forced onto these tanks in this match with Mithy,
getting knocked out of that in the end. Now the fight going to start. Curtain call going in. Perks delivered to the backline. Hansama caught it on the side. Ignar doing his best to disengage Perks, but there's so much support. The push, they're moving in. Knocked out of the fight from one member of G2. Misfits now in trouble. Alfari's on the front line, but his life is not enough as Daisy is raking havoc in the front lines. Now moving forward, G2 takedown 2, and they got their sights on the Baron.
Perks was tankier than everyone in that fight. He had so many shields, so much support, that he could be the front line while dishing out so much damage. And with the jungler gone, G2 have set their eyes on Baron.
Now moving forward, health bar dropping lower and lower, but the execute damage from Kog'Maw could be a real threat here. No way that this should fall in the favor of Misfits, but we've seen crazier things happen. We've seen Power of Evil take so much away, but they're not going to let him do it. Into the wall goes Power of Evil. Does his best now to disengage. Perks is just too slow to make it in. Has expect overstayed as the Baron drops for G2. How many are they going to lose in exchange? G2 Perks has to be safe. One more shot. Not going to get it. Heal comes out from Sven. Oh, Power of Evil takes him down in the end. Not going to be enough.
Perks sacrifices his life to ensure the Baron for G2. I call that worth. Yes, it's going to hurt your KDA just a bit, but overall your team are the ones to gain all the advantages. So honestly, really good collapse from G2, but you're really starting to see the power of this Ivern and why so many teams value high aggressive early game junglers into this jungle pick in particular. Just keep your eyes on Perks. He's in the middle of the enemy team and shield after shield after shield. He takes 0 damage and Alfari dies before he does. Literally, he takes 0 damage. Like, that's insane. That is the value of this Ivern, and this is why, if you allow them to scale up, G2 are able to come out ahead in these team fights.
You got to feel for Misfits, because in that last fight, does Mithy have cleanse? How did he get out? How did he get out of the arrow? But no, it's this supportive Ivern pick. Already with the Mikhail's Crucible, double chalice items. Is he going to go for the Athenes next? But just this guy will make sure that whoever you need to carry the game, he's not going to die. Daisy's the bodyguard on the front line. He's got the shields to back him up. Makes it look all too easy.
I feel like that G2 came out really well in the draft. They pulled out a comp that worked out very nicely for them. They've made these map movements early on to abuse the fact that this Kog'Maw really couldn't add much value. Yes, he's now completed the Leandris, but I feel like it's just too late. G2 have built up too big of a lead, and when you've only got 2 damage dealers in the form of this Kog'Maw and this Ashe, we are starting to see Misfits struggle against the pressure of G2.
And now the QSS for Ryze as well, combined with the Seraphs, combined with all the other items. Perks just continues to scale up, continues to look scarier and scarier. I don't know who they're going to send to fight him in the mid lane. They may just have to give this one up.
I mean, in all honesty, I feel like the Misfits have been caught with their pants down just a little bit, sending a few too many members bot, enabling Perks to get all this damage down onto the tier 2 in the mid. I feel like we haven't seen the top laners this game. Pretty much been left on an island, but who needs them, especially if you're G2 when you have Daisy? Effectively a 5 versus 4, acts as effective frontline tank.
And this is kind of, you know, the 1-3-1 that G2 was so successful with. And so often it was Perks getting caught on side lanes in seasons past, but this time around, having an absolutely monstrous game backed up by the team across the board. Daisy 1v1ing Cacao and the tower 2v1ing. Power of Evil just going to keep laying down poke, not worried about Daisy. Smite goes in. Daisy, not going to drop yet. Walking out, no one's going to get that gold bounty.
As of right now, not yet, but G2 slowly working their way into the base. They've actually set up a 1-1-3. No one can deal with the Ryze, as you mentioned, so they're just using these Power and Empowered minions to slowly work their way into the base. Their siege isn't the greatest, largely because of the sheer amount of wave clear on top of Power of Evil, as well as the Ashe, so they're relying quite heavily on this Baron, and if they can get themselves an inhibitor, it's pretty much GG lights out for the side of Misfits.
The Daisy cooldown took it down insanely fast. It'll be ready soon enough as Expect breaks something on the top side, but the collapse onto Perks, they have been ill-advised. Expect there to back him up if necessary. Good movement coming in from Perks as multiple towers now starting to drop in favor of G2, and Misfits really struggling to find an opportunity to engage.
And so far, Misfits, as you rightly said, really struggling to deal with the pressure. Just the power of Evil wave clear being spread way too thin. But with the Baron buff running out fairly soon and with a lot of resources now being spent from the side of G2, they're pretty happy with what they've gained. A lot of tier 2s. The base has been broken into in the bottom lane, so what you can actually do is send Perks down there to exert a bit of pressure, set up an actual 1-3-1 on the map. And given that Perks, I feel like that no one can really duel him at this point in the game, maybe, just maybe, if Misfits can force a full 5 versus 5 team fight, they can somehow pull out a win, but I feel like it's so difficult when you just look at the amount of utility that Trick can provide.
GA coming in from Expect, Trick, Redemption, Mikhails, Knight's Vow now coming in as he makes it back to the base. Locket of the Iron Solari. We have another Redemption in the hands of Mithy, not focusing on the damage from the Malzahar, just looking for the pick potential. QSS on Perks. It feels almost impossible for Misfits to find a winning fight because I don't know if you can kill him. It'll probably take everything to kill one person, but half of them are coming back again, and the other half aren't even going to die in the first place.
I mean, like, sure. If, say, by some miracle, you kill Perks, you probably have to invest all of your skills into just doing that, but Sven's just going to be like, okay, I'll kill you then. Like, it's so difficult to see. And when you add on top of that, the 12% from Trick's Knight's Vow onto Perks, he becomes just virtually unkillable.
And just remember from this damage chart, about 10 minutes ago when it was all top laners, it only takes 1 or 2 fights, and Kog'Maw and Ryze are already starting to pass everybody up. 80 carries. Fitting more into the utility role for now. We'll see how Hansama can be effective as they move in these late game team fights. But for now, Misfits accepting their role on the back foot. G2 with the 8K gold advantage, all tied up in Dragons. Elder next to spawn. Baron just 1 minute and 35 seconds away, but G2 have absolute vision control on the top side. Just a few more wards to clear out before it's 100%.
So, with the Baron spawning in about 1 minute 30 seconds, they're going to invest all of their time into just clearing out the top side of the map. They can either just rush the Baron, or they can force Misfits into the jungle where they can get themselves the pick. They're going to keep Expect down in the bottom half to just maintain pressure, draw the focus of Alphari, and try and deny him from getting involved in these team fights. But he has to be careful because there is a potential collapse coming out from Mithy.
Now moving in, advancing in, Sven caught out, immediately cleansed out of that fight, courtesy of the Mikhails coming in.
And we have a brief pause.
It's a good chance to evaluate exactly what's happening. I feel like ball 100% in G2's court. They are completely dominating this game. Once again, though, the trend for this series has been slow and steady wins the race. Neither team overstepping their advantage.
When I think of Misfits, I do not think of a rodeo. I do not think of lots of bloodshed. I do not think of lots of team fights. I feel like that they're the slow, calm, calculated style of team. I think that's largely driven by the fact that Kakao and Ignat are the main leaders in terms of direction for the team. And when you also look at the comps that they consistently draft for themselves, I feel like that it becomes difficult for them to really force these early to mid-game sort of snowball comps. And I think that when you allow G2 to play the same sort of style, when you allow G2 to just have a nice passive early game where they can transition fairly evenly into the mid-game, you're just giving them an opportunity to close out. Because I feel like that even with the performance from Misfits in Game 1, it's difficult to say whether or not that suddenly makes them a better team. And with the experience that G2 have, if you're on a level playing field, I just think that they are better players that can better punish you if you just allow them to go even.
Well, right now they're going to try to punish Daisy as he leaves the base, and we get right back in the game. The siege continues from G2. Sven getting hit by the arrow does not matter whatsoever. G2 hitting on multiple fronts. Trick advancing to the mid lane with the rest of his team while we see Poppy consistently on the bottom side. We got Ryze for Perks in the top lane as well. Power people on wave clear duty. Can't afford to misstep here. Cannot afford to step into Perks' range. Could be a death sentence.
Just keeping my eyes on Perks as a Ghost gets popped.
Maybe looking for the aggressive engage here. Sven doing his best to disengage this. Perks just taking his time, doesn't let himself be seen. Power People's moving up to the top side. Has to be careful though, has to respect the Ryze engage. Be ready for Perks. They've sent 2 members top to deal with him. Alphari now engaged on by Daisy, going to get knocked up but pulled back into Expect. Mithy alive on the backside, Sven completely untouched. Trick doing his best to disengage. There's bushes everywhere. Perks is going to get something on the top side. Tower going to go down. Misfits need to engage here, but they're pulling back. It's just a slow, grinding team fight of tanks. No one has found a way into the back line on either side. Hansama oversteps for a second, but gets cleansed out of it in the end. Redemption going in, decent damage. Alphari locked up. Ryze now coming in. Perk's going to be hand-delivered into the team, into the fight. Expect on the front line, but no one can kill him. Ignar taking so much damage. Kakao, the one in trouble. Flash forward from Expect. Damage across the board for G2. Now moving for more, but no one dropping on the G2 side. Hansama taken out. Once again, just a skirmish of 1 kill.
It was simply the inevitable. It was so difficult for Misfits to force the fight. And even if they did, they just did not have the damage to kill this tanky Perks that has so much support. He comes so late into the fray that he's able to quickly clean up the fight, and even though they only get one kill, they get it onto Handsummer. The damage of Misfits is cut by 50%, and that opens up an inhibitor.
Bam! Picture in picture in picture. Well, as we get that sorted out so we can see that replay one more time, both blue buffs can be picked up. Baron now has to be the hotly contested objective on the map. Inhibitor's already dropped on the bottom side, and that's going to make it difficult for Misfits to contest.
Yeah, and this is more of the G2 that we're used to seeing. Game 1, they were caught a little bit by surprise, but just look at how calculated they are. They kited back so calmly. They knew that Perks was exerting pressure in the top side. They knew they didn't have to hard aggress, and then the moment Perks said, hey, I'm ready to join the fight, he does with his ultimate. And notice how he's just kiting around the edge. He's not hard committing. He's relying on expect to draw all of the attention, and you've got Sven safely sitting on the back line, cleaning up the fight. Just, this is much more clean, calm, calculated play from the side of G2. And this is what we were talking about. If you enable them or allow them to have this slow passive early game into a composition that scales nicely, then they're going to take advantage of it and they're going to punish you.
Showing their experience. Showing how calm and confident they are when it comes to execution of a composition like this. Very well built, as we described it. And Misfits, there's a lot of power here in this Kog'Maw. If you ever get low, the Living Artillery does an insane amount of damage, almost 600 per shot, but you have to get them low to do that. And I don't know if they have the damage to make it happen. G2 have all the tools to set the fights on their terms. No way for Misfits to pressure out. No way for Misfits to poke G2 under any towers. Cannot afford to go toe-to-toe.
Bear in mind, there's an exposed inhibitor in the top lane that Expect is just keeping his eye on. G2 are only setting up vision around the Baron. They're not even hard committing to it because they feel that they can just play the wave game. They know that if Misfits try to force a fight, they're going to lose as Kakao goes in.
He's the only one who's going in, though. The disengage might come in. Mithy is caught out. They were a little slow coming in on the Mikhails, but that's double. Oh, redemption going in, and Misfits are going to need some redemption real quick if they want to come out on top. But no, the quick knock out of the fight for Alfari. Out comes the curtain call. Kakao is caught. Hansama's in the backline, but it doesn't matter. He's taking so much damage. The fourth shot connects onto Power of Evil. Mithy engages onto Ignar. Daisy charging into the front lines. The root collar is going to land. Ignar is set to fall. Double kill for Sven. Maybe looking to make it more. The fourth shot's there. Pop! Triple kill dropping for him. Expect now backs off as G2 take absolute control.
Misfits realize that it's gotten to the point in the game where they just cannot win these fights, and so they try to force a play. They tried to take a risk, but all in all, it was pretty much just a death sentence to close the game out a little bit faster. But G2, they're going to play it safe. They're not going to try and end things right now.
G2 now pulling back. Baron has to be in their sights. They got Ignar down, Kakao, Alfari as well. Are they going to back to the base first, or are they just going to rush straight for it? Blast cones there. Are we going to see the four-man stack onto it? Mithy doing his best to clear out what little vision remains. Alt not available yet as multiple members of G2 make their way in. Root collar just to ensure that everyone can join the party. And there's just nothing left for Misfits here.
Nope. Unfortunately, as optimistic as we need to try and be, with a Baron and 3 inhibitors down, that's pretty much GG. Nevertheless, you can see the attempt from Misfits. The biggest problem that they have is just there's no damage. Like, watch Power of Evil. He's not exerting anything. Sure, he gets a lot of poke off, but he just spends a lot of this fight running away because the front line of Misfits just gets eviscerated by both Perks and Sven. So, honestly, I just have to put a lot of this down to the draft as now Misfits.
Draft not going to matter much anymore as the fight starts to come out, but Mithy's the one who gets caught out. Power of Evil now on a killing spree. Alfari's on the front line. Misfits, are they going to be able to find a fight on their terms? Hansama looking for the disengage. Daisy comes out. Kakao moving forward. Power of Evil dishing out the damage. A lot of low health bars mean Power of Evil was that much more effective. Daisy grinding out a small advantage. Misfits holding on, but their base is falling apart in the meantime. They need to get back. They can't afford to contest the Dragon because Minion's just a little bit too strong here, now running in and setting their sights on these inhib towers.
Trading Mithy for your top laner. Sure, you end up getting a kill, but at the end of the day, it means very little when G2 pick themselves up the Elder Dragon. They still have the Baron buff. They can just make their way into the base of Misfits, use the Baron-empowered super minions, just knock on the doors of the Nexus, and I think this is GG for G2.
One last fight, maybe. One last chance for Misfits, but it's going to take some incredibly brave.
A lot of keyboards are going to have to dramatically break.
You have little face, Vedius. Come on,
Yeah.
Misfits. It's just about all over, folks. There's really not a whole lot left to hold on to.
Here we go.
This could be a miracle fight, but it's highly unlikely. G2 giving them the death sentence, slowly bleeding them out. Daisy coming up, minions moving forward. Not a whole lot left for Misfits to hold on to. Maybe they got their minds on game 3. Maybe they're hoping for one more desperate holdout. Either way, it might not matter. Daisy taking some damage. Poppycopter goes up. Poppycopter connects onto the Ashe. Expect's going to go in. Kakao's getting cut through, but Alfari distracts in the meantime. Dragon's going in. Out comes the Redemptions. In goes Perks onto the backside. He's in the back line. No, it's the Ivern, and Hans Sama getting shot across the board. G2, one more team fight to close it out in style, and evening up the series 1-1.
So G2 coming back with the win in game 2. Definitely a lot more like G2 that we're used to, but also a lot of question marks around Misfits once more. Going for the Cogmore, picking a draft that I feel wasn't ideal, did not enable them really to take advantage of their strengths. So far, we've seen a lot of early game success coming out from the side of Misfits. It's something that they have regularly demonstrated throughout their LCS performance, but this was not a composition that enabled them to do that.
Absolutely not. Well, we have a tie here in this best of 3 between Misfits and G2. Let's send it over to the analyst desk to break down exactly how that second game happened.
Thank you very much, Dracos. Let's start by taking a look at picks and bans. Guys, walk me through the intricate play of bans, picks that led to the Kog'Maw pick on the side of Misfits.
We're not equipped to deal with that one.
I think the pick and ban led to the Kog'Maw pick. I think Power Weevil was like, holy shit, I need to play Kog'Maw here.
Yeah.
And then he was like, just give it to me.
On a more serious note, why do you think it came out in the end, and what was the setup of the G2 competition, not just the individual picks? You were talking about a game plan.
No, I just want Trashy to repeat the point you made off air about the first rotation, like the first 3 picks from G2 and what it indicates.
So basically, I think G2 watched the first game and were like, I think we're the better team. They're not really playing macro well. Let's just go with the safe option, the Ivern. And then they have the Malzahar and Jhin good scaling champions and solid champions that they don't really have to play to their full potential. They can just play it out safe and then they will slowly win. And that was kind of how the game was played out. So
And we have to be honest here. This game made us wish we had best of 2 still in the game. Because it was slow, there was nothing happening. There was a phase in the early game where Ignar, he gets a side stone when Mithy does not. He places a ward deep in the lane. It expires 3 minutes later. He places another one. That one expires as well. They pinged it 5 times, and there was no teleports from Alfari. Like Misfits, they were not committing. They were not playing League. They were just waiting, I think.
And we were actually watching it very closely. That like Alfari had pushed top. I think Poppy was kind of chunked. He couldn't really follow on the TP, and they could easily force this if Alfari maybe was more clear in the way he had pressure that he could TP first and actually force it. So yeah, they just seemed like they were too scared to actually win the game, rather just play through.
Previous game as well?
Yeah, no, well, previous game they snowballed, and I understand their hesitation because they always had enough margin still to still win the game. Obviously, their macro in terms of closing was bad, but right now there was no initiative. And then eventually it led to kind of this fight here in the mid game where it was a beautiful ulti from Poppy. And we haven't even highlighted the biggest mistake with this composition. It's a 2 damage comp with Ashe Kog'Maw. That means you have no damage, especially once the Kog'Maw's out of the fight. Just look at Expect once he gets the hammer down here. Perks, he can just literally play 1v5 in these fights with all the shields, the Mikhails, the double redemption. Once this hammer hits, it's over. There's simply no damage. It's impossible for these guys to kill anyone. And I just really didn't like the draft from Misfits.
And also, I think it's weird to see Misfits draft towards a more scaling compositions when in reality G2 showed in the first game that they're actually good at holding on to the game and are good in the mid and late game. And I think Misfits should draft towards winning the early game and snowballing that way around.
And I think that's a really good point because very often we look at the champions, okay, what should they pick here, you know, given meta-wise? But sometimes you need to cater to your team's level and the team you're playing against. And if you're playing against G2 Esports, who have a wealth of experience, 5 veteran players, and whose macro is like super developed, you know you're always going to be a step behind late game, even if your comp is slightly better. So you should just bank on the early game, snowball. These guys are all individually strong players, and they're not doing that at all. They're putting Alfari on a Maokai when they could have used their second ban phase to maybe get him on a carry.
Definitely, like they didn't really use the last pick for anything special. Like they could have easily set Alfari up for like him playing a carry versus a tank, and maybe that could be the win condition. But in this game, they just didn't really have any.
The Misfits are going to be on the blue side for the last game. And then if you think about must bans, must pick, Would you think it's okay for them to give Malzahar to Mithy?
Yeah, I think Mithy, I want to have a conversation with him because I don't think he has practiced Malzahar a lot. Like, I have the utmost respect for Mithy as a player. He
As we all do.
will forever be better and smarter about the game, but he was misplaying this pick. I think super hard in laning phase in terms of item buys because he went tier 2 support item, which is something you should only do in solo queue, or you should pull the trigger to make it happen because he played without a sidestone for so long. And then he was kind of just face-checking left and right. I think Mithy just mentally...
A little disrespectful, maybe?
Yeah, I think he just mentally zoned. I think he got bored, honestly. It's the same sentiment that we had on the
Caps
desk.
yesterday, yeah.
Caps was
and
like,
Jesses.
this is so boring to play this game. And when an enemy is never pushing back, and every time you step in, they yield, you just get a little bit too comfortable and you get picked off.
Yeah, but, you know, week 2 into the LCS, I don't think
Yeah.
you should get bored in games like this.
Well, actually, there is an argument to be made to not play 100% and practice every champion like 20 games in solo queue this early in the season because it can actually lead to burnout. If you're content with roughly placing in the top of the standings and focusing on the macro elements and maybe the team bonding experience, it's okay to not master these champions 1-to-1 ratio and just spam them.
It's
But
actually
that's what you did
something-
in Series 1 last week.
Yeah, for sure.
Trashy, you focus very much so on the team bonding.
Yeah. I mean, right after the game, we were like, guys, it's no biggie. We just go out, have some food, bond a little bit, and it was fine, right?
I'm sorry.
No biggie, yeah. But to be honest, Mithy has actually been very vocal about this, that he, in the start of the season, he doesn't mind being mechanically a bit worse than players because he feels that heading into playoffs, that is where he's going to shine. So.
Yeah. This is obviously a big conjecture, we might be wrong.
Yeah,
We're
and
putting words in Mithy's mouth here, but like, yeah.
And I do think that G2, knowing them, they will want to make a statement and, you know, win that game 3 very decisively and show, hey, we are still the reigning champions and we're not going to give Misfits a chance. As I'm listening to you guys, there isn't really a window of opportunity for Misfits unless they
Early
super snowball early
Which
and
you
then
can on
don't
blue
slow
side.
down.
On blue side, I think they should set themselves up for a first pick jungle pick, get the better jungler, try to snowball that way around, and then...
Big strong early mid, I think, as well.
Yeah, like, I don't want to see Kog'Maw again, like, please.
Just play Corki. Just pick any strong pusher that has no bad matchup. Maybe just an early Rise as well. And ban away the comfort picks. You're on blue side. Maybe actually just ban away the Rise, I think, from perks.
I still think a player like Power Weevil can play catcher into it, and
Yeah.
that should be fine too. I just don't want to see Kog'Maw.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see what happens. Stick around with this series, after this series, for our Saturday night edition of Post Game Lobby. We'll be diving deeper into the EU jungle. But next, Game 3 between G2 and Misfits. Don't go anywhere.
Getting knocked out of that in the end. Now the fight can...
On Maokai. We have Maokai.
Help me. I'm really tanky.
Afari now engaged on by Daisy, going to get knocked up, but pulled back into expect. Mithy alive on the backside, Sven completely untouched. Trick doing his best to disengage. There's bushes everywhere. Perks is going to get something on the top side. Tower going to go down.
Okay, back.
I get off turret.
Oh, it's the Ivern and Hans Sama getting shot across the board. G2, one more team fight to close it out in style and evening up the series.
Nice.